Chapter 2. The Milpa. Tigre and father and dog passed quickly through the village and turned from the road into the bush. Here the animals lived, deer and jaguar and wild pig, snakes and insects. Here were the ruins of the ancient stone-carved temples, now only tree-covered mounds. And here in the bush men made their cornfields, cutting down forest and clearing new land every few years. The bush belonged to the gods, not to man. Men only borrowed it for a little because of their hunger, always asking the gods for permission. And after a few years, they returned the land and made new clearings somewhere else. For 2,000 years, Tigre's people had used the land and returned it, and always borrowing, never possessing or destroying. They had passed it on to their children as rich as it had been passed on to them. They walked single file along the narrow trail, father first, then Tigre, then dog. Stones and roots of trees choked the pathway. Branches and thorns tore their clothing and scratched their cheeks. Father had cut the trail when he chose the land for his milpa. It had not been used for some time, and already the bush was crowding back over the narrow opening as it grew back over every open space, little used trails, abandoned milpas, the ancient cities, until no one would know that a clearing had ever been there. The 2 seasons, months of sun alternating with months of rain, made for this fast-growing forest. In the trees around them, birds sang full-throated and hopped along the branches. Green vines and thin green tree snakes, still as vines, hung from the trees. New leaves from the recent rains crowded the bushes. Bright-colored flowers as gay as the tissue paper decorations in the churches were caught among the green. Tigre's spirits soared like birds' notes. Everything was beginning, he felt. A new year, a new milpa, the new dry season, new blossoms on the trees. Even the birds seemed to have new songs. In no time at all, it seemed, the trail ended, and they had reached father's land. It would be a fine cornfield. Large trees and palm trees grew thickly, which meant good black earth. And there was a hill with painted stones and broken bits of columns held in the vines and roots and branches of trees. Father had prayed and burned candles to San Diego so that he would choose his land well. And he had measured off his choice according to his needs, not more land than he could later clear. The bush gods who owned the trees punished greediness with sickness or bad fortune. "Look, father, one of the old temples," Tigre said. "Yes," father said. "Where there are stones there is humus. There is rich earth." Tigre looked curiously at father. To father, the temple was only good earth or cut polished stones to be used in making a wall or in the floor of the village church. Did father never wonder about the temples themselves or the men who had built them and worshipped at their ancient altars? Ever since Tigre could remember, the temples had fascinated him, but to his many questions his parents gave the same unsatisfying answers. The buildings had been put up by the old people in the good times. Beyond that, no one knew. Tigre sat down by one of the half-buried stones and began to scrape away the dirt with his knife. A warm, rich red began to show beneath the dirt, and then, as he scraped, the figure of an animal appeared, a jaguar. It was like an omen, as if the temple and land belonged to him. He started to call to father, but father had already taken off his shirt and was briskly cutting one of the larger trees. Tigre got up and with his curva, a short knife with a curved blade, began to cut, one by one, the vines and bushes that grew beneath a palm tree at the base of the mound. He sang as he worked, hitting fiercely at the bushes with fast, uneven strokes. But soon the song died away. The blows fell more slowly. The sun was hot, and his arms ached with the unaccustomed labor. His back felt as if it were breaking, and for all his work he could not see that he had made much impression on the bush. He sat down disconsolately on a stone and wiped the sweat from his face. Aye, it was not yet a cornfield. This tangle of trees and bush and vines must all be cut down and burned before it would be a field where seed could be sown. Dog was scampering about over the mound as if he had not a care in the world. He had nosed out one of the great iguana lizards and chased it, barking fiercely, only to have the animal escape beneath a pile of stones. Tigre fitted a pebble in his slingshot and aimed it idly at a yellow orchid in a tree above him. Back along the trail, his quick eyes noted the wrinkled gray paper-like nest of bush hornets hanging from an avocado tree. He fitted another stone and aimed it. The stone flew true, and Tigre laughed aloud as the hornets spilled out, confused and excitable as hens. 50 feet, he thought, nearer 60, and leaves and branches to deflect the stone. Aye, what things I could do if I had a gun! Deer and wild pig would be nothing. I could shoot a flying bird through the eye. What Tigre wanted more than anything else in the world was a gun. Boys under 15 were forbidden by law to take part in the communal hunts, but sometimes, when he and father were alone in the bush, father let Tigre take his gun to practice. That way a boy learns, father said, and already Tigre could hit his mark every time. Father put down his axe and sat down beside Tigre. Tired, son? He asked. Tigre nodded. A new clearing always means work, but it would be more work if we used the old field year after year. Weeds would spring up as thick and fast-growing as bush. It would take all our time to cut them, 12 months a year cutting weeds instead of 1 month felling trees. And weeds caused poor soil. Bush keeps out weeds and enriches the soil, so men use the land for a few years and return it to the bush. Land gets weary too and needs rest, as men do, father said. He stood up and picked up his axe. 1 stroke at a time, so many separate strokes and the work is done. At noon they paused in their work and ate their tortillas, and father made pozole by mixing in a half-gourd cup a little masa with water from his water gourd. Tigre hungrily gulped the nourishing milky beverage and thought that never had the corn drink tasted so good. Afterward Tigre rested for a little, lying under a tree, his hat over his eyes. When they stopped in the late afternoon, only 1 small corner had been cleared in a large field. The walk home seemed endless. Tigre stumbled on the trail. Silently he ate his tortillas and boiled black beans with sauce of ground chili peppers. Mother took down his hammock and he fell asleep at once.